Hi, my name's Jenny, and I'm going to tell a West African folk tale about a character named Anansi. Anansi's a spider who's a trickster, and he does get into trouble. And this story is about what happens to Anansi, the trouble he gets into, why he lives in long grass, and why he is bald. This story I've chosen for adults. Once, a long time ago, Anansi married his wife. His in-laws had decided that a few months after they would like to have a party for their daughter and her new husband. And so it was planned that there would be a big party, and Anansi and his wife were thrilled. They love parties. They love to get dressed up. They put on their fanciest clothes. His wife had a beautiful dress filled with flowers, ruffles and ribbon. She had high-heeled red shoes that she wore. She loved to dance. And she did up her hair. And she had a lovely turban in her head that was full of color. And she had her diamond earrings. And she looked beautiful. Now, Anansi liked to dress up even more than his wife. He felt very important when he dressed up, and he felt very rich. And so he picked out his best silk shirt, his pants that he loved that had pleats down the front, his shiny black shoes. He picked out a jacket that matched, fit perfectly, and he took quite some time to choose a tie. And he got that all adjusted properly. Looked pretty handsome, he thought. Then he went to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror and checked out his nice head of hair. It's thick, curly. And he got his comb and he fixed this bit up. And he fixed right here. And oh, there was hair poking up here, and he got that down and he shined it up and slicked it. Oh, he said, look this way, that way, beautiful. I'm very handsome, he said to himself. Really, I am. But he said, there is one thing missing. He said, I've got to put on my favorite thing for the party, and that is my tall black hat. And it had a wide brim like that, this tall, and he got his black hat. He put it on his head. He adjusted it and he put it on tight. But it fit like a glove, and he loved his black hat. And he looked at himself and he said, you know, it's true. I am very handsome. I look very important with my black hat. I look very wealthy with my black hat. And with that, he and his wife were ready to go to the party that was going to be held in their honor. And as they walked out the door, arm in arm, Anansi liked to look at reflections in the window. And he said, he said to his wife, I do have to say that I look very important with my black hat. And she agreed. And in the mirror, he'd catch a glance at himself and he'd say, I have to say, I do look very wealthy with this black hat. And she agreed. And they walked, and they walked, and they walked. And finally they did arrive at the party at his in-laws' house. And there were people. He couldn't believe how many people there were. There were people, there were friends, family, neighbors from far and wide that had come to celebrate him and his wife and their marriage. And he took that opportunity to mingle with all the guests. And he strutted through the party and puffed himself out and stood straight so that it would show off his black hat. And he knew that he was making a great impression on all the guests at the party. Finally, it was time to sit down and eat. There was a feast. There was more food at this party than he had ever seen. There was tables covered with all kinds of different types of stews. Some he had never even heard of. They smelled delicious though. There was soup, lemon soup. There was cassava. There was yams, baked potato. There was chilies of all kinds. There was spiced butter. And there was lots of palm wine. Well, Anansi sat down at the table with his wife next to him, looking very handsome, and his wife was looking very beautiful. And they got their plates and they loaded up their plates with stew and cassava. And they each did get a bowl of soup. And the chilies, delicious. And they each did have a glass of palm wine. And they drank the wine, and Anansi ate, and ate, and ate, and ate the delicious food until he was sure he could not eat another thing. He was kind of getting worried that one of his fancy buttons would pop off. He had eaten so much. He took a break and a deep breath. And he said to himself, there is something wrong here. I don't understand. He said, there's all this food here. He said to himself, there's all this food here, but I do not see that there is one pot of my favorite dish in the whole wide world. My favorite dish is hot beans, and there is no hot beans being served at this party. I said, how could this be? My in-laws know I love hot beans, and they have chosen not to serve hot beans at this party. This is wrong. And he reached over to his wife and he said, dear wife, there is something terribly wrong here. And his wife looked panicked for a second and said, what is it? And he said to his wife, there are no hot beans here being served at this meal. That's not right. Hot beans are my favorite dish. How can it be that there are no hot beans being served here? Your mom and dad know that I love hot beans. It's my favorite dish in the whole world. And she said, oh, Anansi, don't be silly. Look at all the food that is here. There's piles left over. Just take some more stew. Look at that. There's lots of stew. Take some yams. There's some soup. Have some more palm wine. And don't worry about the hot beans. And he did try. He tried to eat a little more. But finally, he just could not. He put down his fork and he sat up and he pushed his chair back. He stood up. And just as he stood up, his father-in-law walked by, and he said, Father-in-law, could I please just step outside to get some fresh air? And his father-in-law said, sure. Anansi had also taken a few deep sniffs. As he stood up, he recognized that smell. It was a smell of hot beans. And so he said, so there are hot beans here, but they're just not serving them to me. And he sniffed again. I know there's hot beans here. And he did not go outside, but instead he tried to figure out where that smell of hot beans was coming. And so he carefully snuck around the room. He got out of the dining room where the party was being held, and he snuck into the kitchen. And sure enough, in the kitchen, that smell was very strong. He couldn't believe it. And he went directly to the stove, and sure enough, there was a pot boiling on the stove that had hot beans in it, and it was bubbling and boiling and bloop, bloop, bloop. And Anansi couldn't believe it. How ungrateful were his in-laws. How could it be that they would not serve hot beans when they knew that Anansi loved hot beans? How is it that they kept it from the table? Did they not love him? Did they care that little about him that they would not put out his favorite dish in the whole world? They were against him. They did not love him. Here he thought they did, but they didn't. And he got so inflamed with anger. He couldn't believe it, how ungrateful they were for all that he had done for their daughter and for them. And without really thinking, Anansi was so angry that he just took off that hat that he had, his favorite one, and he got a ladle and he dipped it into that pot of hot beans, and he plunked it into his hat, and he took another big spoonful into the hat, another spoonful into the hat, another one into the hat, and he kept going and going until his hat was 3/4 full of hot beans, and they were steaming. Anansi took that hat, he put it on his head, he tightened it down on his head. He was so angry. It was a little hot. Whew. He could do it though. He was tough. He could do it. He was taking those hot beans out of this house to his own house to eat them. Anansi left the kitchen. He straightened up and tried to walk as straight as he could, despite having hot beans on his head under the hat. Ooh. It was hot. That's for sure. Those beans were hot beans, all right. And he tried to walk with composure, and he went to where his wife was, and he said, "Dear wife, we have to go right now." And she said, "What? We can't go right now, Anansi. It's impossible. We are the guests of honor. It would be rude for us to leave now. To be the first guests leaving, that would be rude. We have to stay until the end. That's all there is to it." And he said, "No, we have to go now. I'm telling you, we must go now." And just as he said that, his father-in-law stood up and he clapped his hands. And after he clapped his hands, he called out and he said, "Everybody, attention please. Everybody, attention. I want to take this time to make a special speech for my new son-in-law, Anansi." And everybody went, "Yay, Anansi! Yay, Anansi!" And Anansi's standing there. He's trying to have a smile on his face, but boy, those beans are sure hot. And he really tries to stand tall and have a smile, but the beans. And Anansi's father-in-law continues on with his speech and clasps his hands and slowly starts with, "Anansi, we want to take this time just to thank you for all that you have done for our family. We are so grateful, Anansi, how you have married our daughter. She has a fine husband. You look after her so much, and we are just so thankful that you're able to provide for her and give her special things. And Anansi, we're so thankful that you've looked after us as well, our daughter's parents, and we just want to thank you, Anansi. We can't thank you enough for all that you have done. We are so grateful, Anansi." As the speech is going on, there's one bean starts to fall out and dribble down Anansi's face, and then there's another bean that kind of pops out of the hat and dribbles down. Oh, it's hot, burning. Oh, and then there's more beans that pop out from underneath the hat and down his neck. Very uncomfortable. He does try to keep a smile, but it's very hard. And more beans down this side, down his neck and back, and oh, it hurts. It's burning. And Anansi tries to have a smile. And sweat is coming down his face. It is so hot. Those beans are so hot. He is so uncomfortable. And he just is itching and it hurts. And he takes his hat and he takes it off his head. And all of a sudden, all the beans that were in the hat go plop down his face, neck onto his fine clothes. And Anansi's in-laws are mortified. They look at Anansi, and his father-in-law says, "Anansi, you are a thief." And he says, "You're a thief." And he says it one more time, "Anansi, you are a thief." And before long, all the people at the party are calling out to Anansi, "You are a thief, a thief, a thief." And as they are saying that, Anansi shrinks down, wants to hide. And he crawls out of the house, and he crawls into the tall grasses. And that is still where he lives today. And as for his hair, well, it all did burn off. And to this day, he is still bald. Snip, snap, snout, this tale is told out.